Welcome to Module 14. I am very glad you are joining us today. As always, thank you for your graciousness, as AI has enabled the translation, voiceover, and avatar features of these videos. Please feel free to reach out with any errors so that we can improve the resources. You are also invited to spend time with the PDF guide. You will see images of the PDF throughout this video to help orient you to its material. That will aid you when you use it to study after watching this video. In the last few modules, we have focused on persuasion, diplomatic language, and advanced professional messaging. Now we arrive at a critical and very important question. How do strong professionals build trust over time through business English? This module is about building trust and professional influence through the everyday language choices that shape how other people experience working with you. In many workplaces, influence depends on more than strong ideas. It also depends on attentiveness, on validation, on thoughtful questions, and on appropriate openness. This means that business English is not only about sounding correct or formal, it is also about sounding trustworthy, respectful, and easy to work with. In this module, we will focus on three things: trust-building language, relationship awareness, and two especially useful techniques in a second language context: validation and appropriate vulnerability. The previous modules taught you how to persuade, how to adapt diplomatically, and how to message strategically. Those skills still matter, but long-term influence depends on something more. It depends on how people feel after repeated interactions with you. Do they experience you as clear, as respectful, as attentive, as reliable? This module focuses on how trust is built through those repeated, everyday moments. Trust is often built in small moments, not only in the important meeting, not only in the major presentation, but in the small habits that happen again and again. Following up clearly, responding reliably, remembering prior conversations, using a respectful tone, making other people feel heard. Many professionals assume influence comes from one strong performance, but in reality, trust often grows through consistency. People tend to trust professionals who sound steady, thoughtful, and attentive. In a second language, many professionals focus heavily on correctness. That makes sense. You want your English to be accurate. You want to avoid mistakes. But strong communication also includes relationship awareness. This means noticing what the other person values, what tone they respond well to, how much detail they prefer, and what kinds of follow-up build trust. In other words, strong professionals remember not only the task, but also the person. That is where communication becomes more than correct. It becomes effective. One simple trust-building technique is to ask questions that show memory and care in a professional way. Thoughtful questions show that you remember, that you care, and that you are paying attention. For example, you might ask, "How did your client visit go last week?" Or, "You mentioned a new team structure. How is that transition going?" Or, "Last time you referred to a busy travel schedule. Have things calmed down a bit?" Or, "How is the new project phase progressing?" These questions are useful because they show professional memory and professional care. They help the other person feel that your communication is not generic. At the same time, relationship awareness does not mean crossing professional boundaries. That is an important distinction. In many professional settings, it is best to avoid pressing people for highly personal details. That may include medical information, private family conflict, salary pressure, religion, politics. Thoughtful communication builds trust. Intrusive curiosity does not. A better approach is simple. Show interest through professionally relevant details, not private pressure. Another highly useful trust-building skill is validation. Validation does not mean full agreement. It means showing the other person that their concern or perspective has been genuinely heard and understood. That is especially powerful in a second language. Many professionals know how to state an opinion. Fewer know how to acknowledge another person before responding. Useful phrases include, "That makes sense," "That is a fair concern," "I can see why that would matter," "I understand why you are approaching it that way," "That sounds like a difficult timeline." These phrases make a conversation feel safer and more respectful, and that often increases trust. A very strong communication pattern is this: validate first, then respond. It means showing that the other person's concern or perspective has been heard and understood. First, acknowledge the other person's view. Then, add your perspective or recommendation. For example, "That is a fair concern. One possible way to address it is," or "I can see why speed matters here." We may also want to consider implementation risk, or "That makes sense from a budget perspective. We should also think about long-term maintenance." This pattern is effective because it helps you sound respectful, thoughtful, and strategic at the same time. Let us look at one more valuable technique: appropriate vulnerability. For example, you might say, "I may not have the full picture yet, but here is my current view." Or, "Let me think that through for a moment." Or, "I want to be careful here because this is an important decision." Or, "I may need to confirm that detail before answering fully." These statements do not make you sound weak. When used well, they make you sound honest, careful, and trustworthy. That is why appropriate vulnerability matters. This leads to an important truth. You do not need perfect English to build influence. In a second language, some professionals feel pressure to sound perfect at all times, but small, appropriate vulnerability can actually build credibility. Over time, people often care more about whether you are clear, respectful, responsive, thoughtful, reliable, and easy to work with. That is good news for second language professionals. The goal is not perfection. The goal is trust. At this point, several words become especially useful: rapport, validation, boundary, vulnerability, credibility, and follow-through. These are not only vocabulary words, they are trust-building concepts. They help explain how professional relationships grow stronger over time, and they give you practical language for thinking about how communication works beyond grammar alone. There are also a few trust-building patterns that are especially useful in business English. To show memory, you might say, "Last time you mentioned," or "You previously noted that." To validate, you might say, "That makes sense," or "I can see why that matters." For appropriate openness, you might say, "I may need a moment to think that through," or "I want to be careful before I respond fully." And for respectful follow-through, you might say, "I wanted to follow up on our earlier conversation," or, "As discussed, the next step is..." Let me give you 4 practical trust-building rules. Do not only sound correct. Sound considerate. Do not only ask questions. Ask questions that show memory and respect. Do not only respond with your opinion. Validate before you redirect. And do not only try to sound strong. Use appropriate vulnerability when honesty builds credibility. These are small shifts, but they create a big difference in how other people experience your English. They can make your communication sound more professional, more trustworthy, and more effective over time. Now pause for reflection. Think about someone you trust professionally. Maybe they remember details. Maybe they respond respectfully. Maybe they follow through. Maybe they listen well. Maybe they do not make things awkward. That is worth noticing, because trust often grows through exactly those habits. And that leads to an important question. Which of those trust-building habits could you strengthen in your own business English? This week, I want you to practice building trust through language. Take a statement such as, "I disagree," and rewrite it so it includes validation and a different perspective. Take a statement such as, "Send me the update," and rewrite it so it sounds clearer and more considerate. Take a statement such as, "I do not know," and rewrite it so it includes appropriate openness and professionalism. The goal is to add validation, tact, memory, clarity, or appropriate vulnerability. Let me close with this. Long-term professional influence is built through everyday language choices. In business English, trust grows when you sound attentive, respectful, and reliable. Validation helps other people feel heard without requiring full agreement. Appropriate vulnerability can increase credibility when it signals honesty and care. And strong professionals remember the person, not only the task. That is the deeper lesson of this module. Business English is not only about vocabulary, grammar, or formality. It is also about how you make people feel when they work with you. Clear, respectful, capable, trustworthy. That is the deeper power of strategic communication in a second language. Thank you for your time, your effort, and your thoughtful engagement throughout this program. It has been a pleasure learning with you.